Welcome to the 5th CVA Virtual Series online panel, the one about key ceremonies. My name is Markus Perdisa, and I'm your host today. I head PwC Switzerland's Blockchain Technology Competence Center. CVA, the Crypto Valley Association, is the leading global cryptocurrency and blockchain technology ecosystem. Originally founded in Zug in 2017, we are now fully global and have more than 7,100 ecosystem members. As part of the CVA, it is my honor to chair the Cybersecurity Working Group. It is our mission to increase trust in crypto assets and blockchain technology through the development and sharing of crypto cybersecurity best practices. We are a core group of a dozen cybersecurity researchers, practitioners, and auditors, and a wider group of about 150 interested members. The core group meets monthly to exchange on emerging cybersecurity threats and techniques, and to work on publications and events. We aim to have 4 major publications and events every year. In the first 18 months since working group creation, we have put an emphasis on custody and the protection of private keys. Now we're starting to work on smart contract security and privacy techniques in blockchain. Hit me up through the website or on LinkedIn if you'd like to join one of our next meetings. Today, we're here to demystify key ceremonies. When you unpack your Ledger Nano, you check the seal, you write down the seed phrase. That is a key ceremony. When you create the paper wallet using software or dice that you audited before, that's also a key ceremony. And when you work through a 100+ pages, step-by-step detailed runbook to initialize multiple servers, applications, and hardware security modules, that is also a key ceremony. We all know many public blockchains aim to be a trustless system, but when handling crypto assets, you need a trusted setup to protect the private key that grants access to your assets. This is a whole process, starting with the procurement of audited wallet hardware and software. It includes creating a backup, and it ends when you are ready to transact on the blockchain, to make or receive your first transaction. We call this the key ceremony because, as one of the common themes, it usually includes the generation of blockchain private keys. Few people have to design key ceremonies for highest security custody. The people on the panel today are among the top experts in the field and have tens of years of experience designing, executing, and auditing crypto key ceremonies. We just released their collected best practices today so that you all can benefit from their shared experiences. These are the Cva Key Ceremony Guidelines. The link is already live on our website in the news section. JP and Maria are the editors of the Cva Key Ceremony Guidelines, and I'll be handing over to them shortly. But they couldn't have done it alone. The entire working group was involved. And I'd like to call out one person who cannot be on the panel today. This is Julien Bringer of CySec Systems. Thank you, Julien. JP Omason is the leading researcher of cryptographic systems in blockchain and my co-chair in the Cybersecurity Working Group. Maria Sommerhalder is my colleague in blockchain audit at PwC and is the one person in Switzerland who has probably attended the most high security key ceremonies to date. JP and Maria, the stage is yours.
Hello. Thank you, Markus, for the nice introduction. So I'm here with Maria from PwC. And we're really excited to talk about this document that we've been working on with the CVA Cybersecurity Working Group. So very briefly, Mariana will briefly present it, but I recommend that you look at it. It's very accessible to anyone. So this document will probably be of interest to anyone managing digital assets and therefore dealing with private keys or Cs. And of course, the more value you manage, the more Bitcoin, the more Ether, then the more money you have, the more important it is to securely manage your keys. And therefore, the more detailed and complex will be your key ceremony, as Marcus defined. Just for example, the case, if you're a bank, a crypto exchange, if you're talking millions or hundreds of millions of assets, if not more, then you want to be very careful how you generate your keys and how you make the backups. But perhaps you've never heard about the word key ceremony and you just wonder what it's about. So I will let Maria give you a brief overview of what we're talking about.
Hi guys, my name is Maria Sommerhalder and I'm a Senior Associate at PwC and I work for the Blockchain Competence Center. So first and foremost, there's this notion that key ceremonies are like a new concept because they are, in our industries, associated with crypto, which has only been around since 2009 in the current form. But they're actually not new. The concept has been around for 2 decades, and they are used to secure the integrity of some of the most important and valuable keys, for example, the backbone of the internet, as well as keys held by governments to secure passports. So then, what is a key ceremony? It's actually the name given to a ceremony during which cryptographic secrets are generated. In our context here, secrets typically refer to seeds from which addresses and key pairs are derived. So we are aware that different custody solutions or storage solutions have different kinds of key ceremonies, but in general, the common denominators are the 3 following points. So the first point is that there are participants that gather together to carry out the steps according to an agreed upon protocol. So during that protocol, you generate cryptographic secrets in a secure way, in a safe environment. So this means that no one before, during, or after the ceremony can actually guess or know the contents of what happened there. So you can never guess your private keys. The second one is that you create a recovery value, commonly known as backup. And this needs to be in a guaranteed to work way with the relevant access controls. Then the third part is that you have an auditability of the whole process, meaning that you can demonstrate to your customers and your shareholders that each step was carried out and it was actually secure. With this, I hand over to JP again.
Okay, well, thank you, Maria. That's a good overview. Maybe I won't give you all the content that's in the paper, but maybe we thought we could focus on maybe the top 3, the 3 most important things that you have to think about when you do a key ceremony, or maybe the top 3 in general. Because most people, when they hear about key ceremony, what you can probably guess what it's about. Their first concern will be, okay, I see people in the room raising their hand because they have an idea. So the first concern is, how do you generate the key from nothing? Which random generator or pseudo-random generator do you use? Which is of course important because if your PRNG is bad, then everything is compromised, even if you have the perfect ceremony. But if your PRNG, if your pseudo-random generator is compromised or weak or biased, then all the rest is completely useless. Now, the good news is that finding a good PRNG is perhaps the simplest problem you have to solve when you do a key ceremony. People like to talk about it, like to talk about the concept of entropy and so on, because that's something that's easy to discuss. But from an engineering, from a security perspective, it's actually the simplest problem. Maybe the second point that should not be overlooked. So I don't know, if you're a musician, you know that practicing, repeating again and again and again and again is super important. So that's the same. When you do key ceremony, it's like if you're playing a piece by Beethoven, you never repeat enough. The more you repeat, the more you learn the nuances, subtleties, all the details that you missed before. You have to do rehearsals, dry runs in realistic conditions, and that's really how you test your process, your technology. And maybe last but not least, as Maria hinted before, what's important is, well, backups, more general recovery values, because things can go wrong, things will go wrong, and you need to be prepared. So you need to create backups, you need to create things, values that can be used when things go wrong. So things going wrong might be, I don't know, some computer dying, some storage medium not working, some fire in the building, maybe some people leaving the company, or even worse things. So you have to anticipate these cases. You have to be prepared, and you have to make sure that these recovery values will be available when you need them. So then again, you need to repeat the process, generate the backup values correctly, and make sure that they will be working when you need them. And even if you store them for, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you want to make sure that 5 years from now, they're still available. So you want to periodically check that they will work. And it's, as everything in a key ceremony, easier said than done. But maybe to conclude this part, I would say every minor detail in a ceremony is ultimately important. Maria, your turn.
Yeah, this leads me to the top 3 risks of a key ceremony. As you were hinting, backups are super important. So my top 1 pet peeve or risk that I would like to talk about is unrecoverable backups, because that's literally the worst thing that can happen to you. So during a ceremony, you have to have a process in place where you create recovery values and you verify them at the same time, preferably during the same ceremony. So meaning, this means that you reconstruct a secret again to test that it works with the backup process that you have in place. And of course, any recoverability should be tested before you move into production anyway. But it doesn't actually stop there, because after you have tested your backups, you have to decide after the ceremony, like, how do you save them and where? Like, for example, the main question that you have to ask yourself is, what medium do you use? Do you use steel plates? Do you use USB sticks? Do you use paper? But that's one question. Then you need to decide where you will store them. And one of the most important aspects here is that you need to document your chain of custody. This means that you need to know who has access to which backups at what time. So you know exactly what backups are where. And then, of course, you need to think about things like natural disasters or hardware failure, meaning that you need to have redundant copies of the same backups, preferably in geo-redundant locations. So, for example, if you have an earthquake in Bern, you will still have a backup in Zurich, 150 kilometers from each other, meaning that at least one backup is safe. But then you also need to go into processes like access controls, not only physical, but also logical. So you need to make sure that you have processes in place to make sure that only certain people have access to the backups, and also that you put them in some form of physical protection. Like, do you put them in a safe? Do you put them in a bank vault? Those are all things that you need to think about. And also, I'd recommend companies to make sure that they have some form of access log so that they know who exactly has had access to their backup. And then the second risk I would like to talk about is poor planning of ceremonies, because there are many things that can go wrong because many people don't know about the best practices. Because as we all know, this industry is fairly new, and there have not been many attempts to standardize what you need to do during a key ceremony. So one thing that I've seen is that there was poor segregation of duties. So for me as an auditor, it would not be acceptable to go into a key generation ceremony and do something like enter commands on a computer. So you always need to make sure that you have clearly defined your roles of all the participants in the ceremony and make sure that you stick to that. So for example, an auditor is supposed to be an observing party, a neutral party, and cannot actually do any active things. So you need to be sure of that. And you also need to make sure that there's always a 4I principle that is being observed, meaning that no one person should be unattended, should be unsupervised, because that could mean that your ceremony could be compromised. Another thing is kind of trivial as well, but it's not having remnants, meaning that you don't have artifacts. So artifacts could be a rule book, a storybook, a description of the process of the whole key generation ceremony that you can then give to your auditors or give to your clients to make sure that every single step is delineated and that you have a proof that each step was followed and all participants signed off on it. So that is one of the things that makes it very auditable, and it's a valuable tool to make sure that the trust in your PKI is actually warranted. So yeah, those are the top 3.
Thank you, Maria. So I think now we will move to the next part of the event, which Amy will moderate.
Thanks, JP, for handing over the mic, and I invite all the wonderful panelists to unmute themselves and also turn on their cameras. And it's my my utmost honor to have you all and shed a bit more light, help to shed a bit more light on key ceremonies. So as the very first question, it would be great if you answered, or if you introduced yourselves first, and please say also that how your company and how yourself is involved in key ceremonies. And let's go in alphabetic order. So Charles, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I'm Charles Guillemet. I'm CTO at Ledger. My background is mostly cryptography and security. I spent my whole career in either breaking security solution or improving the security of existing solution. This is the two faces of the same coin, I think. I mainly worked in the smart card industry, and I joined Ledger around 3 years ago. I first created the Ledger security department, which includes the dungeon. I'm pretty sure you have heard about the dungeon. This is our internal security research team, and also our security certification activities. And then I moved to the CTO role. For those who don't know Ledger, I don't know if there is any. Ledger is a security company. I'm sure you know well our hardware wallet product line, the Ledger Nano S and the Ledger Nano X, the small devices, which is the reference in the segment. And hardware wallet remain the best way to secure and manage crypto assets for individuals. We also have an enterprise solution for managing crypto assets, which is called the Ledger Vault. It's a security product enabling financial institutions to manage their crypto assets in a secure way. It enables our customers to implement their own governance layer within a flexible framework in order to secure the management of their assets. As a security company, we are involved in different key ceremony. For instance, we do key ceremony internally. We use, for instance, attestation mechanism to ensure hardware and software running on our product are legitimate. And to do so, we generate our own root keys during internal key ceremonies, and it takes place inside the dungeon, of course. Also, to use our products, our customers are going through key ceremonies. As Marcus said before, for individuals, the key ceremony is quite simple. You just generate your seed and write down in the paper, and it only involves the hardware wallet user. For Ledger Vault, it's a bit more sophisticated, since we also want to give our customers a way to avoid the single point of failure, and so it's made in a distributed way. As a security company, we're trying to provide our customers with the best tools for securing crypto assets, and this definitely includes the right tools for doing secure key ceremonies.
Merci. JP, would you like to go next?
Yes, hello again. Yeah, I did not introduce myself before. So Jean-Philippe, JP Amasson. I'm representing Taurus Group, and I'm myself an expert in cryptography. Even before it was cool 10 years ago. And like Charles, I've been interested in breaking stuff and breaking blockchain quite a lot. So as a co-founder of Taurus, I'm also head of security. And of course, we also do key ceremonies. So our flagship product is called Taurus Protect. and something you can see as kind of advanced wallet system for organizations such as banks that need to manage money. And we, of course, you have a key ceremony because you need seeds and secrets and other stuff. Oh, by the way, key ceremony is not just about keys. That's why the term is not perfect. Because you need a key ceremony every time you change some critical stuff. And yeah, so what we do in this context, so we assist our customers when they do the key ceremony, because they use our product on premise, but we're not the ones generating the keys for them because we don't have to. And we also run key ceremonies for our own needs. So we're quite familiar with this. We've learned a lot, and I'm excited to talk with all these panel members about it today.
Thank you very much. Maria, please go next.
Hi. So as I said before, my name is Maria Sommerhalder and I work for PwC. I got interested in crypto during university because a friend of mine was mining it on his laptop in our dorm. And then this became sort of a recurring topic for me because I was working for the Red Cross with refugees. And I noticed that some of them were spending like 20% of the money that they were trying to send home just on handling fees and transaction fees. And I thought that maybe Bitcoin might be a viable alternative for them. In fact, like I later experienced this myself while living in Asia and going through currency devaluations. So that made me decide to actually work in crypto. And first I worked for a crypto custody provider in Zurich, and now I'm working for PwC. Yeah, so what PwC does is it's an audit and accounting company. It's not exactly the typical company that you associate with crypto, but yet we are trying to move into that space because we notice that there's a lack of professional services, because we think it's very much a sort of Wild West industry with a need of professionalization. And we have noticed in our last couple of years that a lot of not only big players in the market here in Switzerland, but also smaller startups are coming to us for help in order to bring comfort and assurance to their clients as well as their shareholders. And we are trying to help them by providing assurance as well as auditing services for them.
Thank you so much. And we also have, last but not least, Vasily representing Sabre.
Hi, yeah, Vasily Lavrov. I'm head of blockchain program management at Sabre. Joined the company around 2 years ago, and before that was mainly working as a consultant in the private banking industry in Zurich. I was actually, why I joined Sabre, it was a bit of a fun challenge. Building a bank in less than 12 months from bottom up was extremely exciting, and that's why I decided to join the project. I was the first employee in the COO area, and together very closely, naturally, with the CTO the area division, we had to basically, on a blank piece of paper, design the entire architecture and have sort of a rough idea of what processes or how we would sort of transact with crypto assets, with cryptocurrencies. And that was one thing I did. And in parallel of that, I was also the project manager for our banking license. So working closely also with the regulator. Yeah, very excited to be here. What is Sabre? Maybe in a few words. Sabre is one of the first fully licensed Swiss fully licensed banks specialized in digital assets. So this includes our 4 divisions, which we have called as trading and credit solutions. We have also what we call client and investment solutions. We have all naturally everything around custody, so digital asset services, and last but not least, an evolving topic ever in the industry around asset tokenization.
Thanks so much. My colleagues are reminding me that I didn't say that you guys can ask questions in the Q&A, and you're also, you will be able to unmute yourself if you like and ask the question that way. later. So as we move on, this next question is going to be for Charles and also for JP. So Charles, as the CTO of Ledger and the creator of Donjon and the CTO of Ledger What as well, you have experienced a lot of key ceremonies. What is the biggest learning? And then later for JP as a researcher in security and cybersecurity mainly, and CTO of Taurus, what is your biggest learning?
Yes, with our product, we offer our customers a technical solution for setting up key ceremonies. And my biggest learning experience is that, unfortunately, the users of our products are not all security experts nor cryptographers. And this is an issue. It's difficult to implement good practices when you don't fully understand the ins and outs of a key ceremony. So what we learn is the following. Basically, besides the technical solution, which must be secure and have all the requirements, we also have to make sure our users fully understand what they are doing and what are the important points they must pay attention to. So it's about UX, it's about education. We make sure our UX is as simple as possible, while also it contains all the necessary information to understand what is going on. On the education side, we have the technical account managers who are in charge of the training of the users, of our users. And the key ceremonies on the Ledger Vault are part of the whole onboarding process on the platform, and it always comes with a training. That would be my biggest learning experience.
So much to educate on, and this is also why the CVA has published this key ceremony, trusted key ceremony guidelines. So this is going to the same direction, or this has the same notion. Thanks. JP?
Yeah. Well, I think we have a very good comment by Charles. I can relate, even though we have a slightly different context. But well, regarding what I learned, I will focus on the main learnings. If I were to talk about everything, we will have like 2 hours of discussion, and you will have to stop me. But maybe the 2 main things that I learned, so preparing a key ceremony, it's generally a big learning experience because it's very interesting as, let's say, a risk management exercise, because you combine technology, people, process for something that will happen in a very short window of time, but with a lot of things at stake, a lot of money, and you will have to prepare in terms of threat modeling, in terms of what you trust. And in this context, what we've done, it involves software and hardware and people and stuff. So when we use software, we value a lot of transparency, auditability. So we tend to use open source software that is established and trusted. And before using it, we like to do some review ourselves of the code and everything and test it as much as possible. And one main learning that was, well, not completely surprised given my background, but some established software that a lot of people use, that big companies use for collecting the Bitcoin and so on, sometimes are very fragile or sometimes have bugs, and the quality is not always there. So if you're familiar with the open source community, it doesn't come as a big surprise, but sometimes you're punched in the face and you're like, damn, that's even worse than expected. So we're now extremely careful when we use third-party software, and we don't use black boxes. We only use stuff we review, and yeah, that's quite important. And the second thing, maybe personally, in terms of learning, so my background is in technology, security, crypto, and code. And I was much less familiar with all the, let's say, procedural aspects, all the bureaucracy parts. So I don't mean it in a bad way, but I've learned a lot from my colleagues from Taurus who have a financial background. And I've learned a lot also from auditing companies that have been working with us, helping us improve the maturity of our process, help us improve the quality, and draw a roadmap in terms of how we go from this maturity level to this maturity level, and how to structure this in a, let's say, very rigorous way, because we are, given the customers we have, given what is at stake, we should not make any mistake. But like any profession, sometimes not everything is perfect. So you need to have all the processes to react properly. And that's been a big learning for me, and I'm still learning every day about this.
Yeah, there's always new risk or hiccup or unexpected things with key ceremonies, right? You can never do this often, as you said earlier. So the next question will go to Vasily. And Vasily, you're the one person on the panel who designs many key ceremonies for your company. So you're not doing that for an external company, but for Sabre. And my question to you is that which are the main topics you break this process down into? And when we prepared for the call, you walked me through that, how Sabre does things. So it would be nice to hear that again and share it with the
Sure.
attendees.
Thank you for the question. I think first is I'm very fortunate to work with very smart and very skilled people, which helps a lot when you have to design a custody solution for a bank. Now there's 5 areas which I see, which some of the other panelists have talked about, but the way we broke it down at Sabre was into these 5 categories, 5 areas, as you mentioned. The first one was, how do we address physical security? That was a big thing. During the key ceremony, how do you make sure that you have only the people you want there, and there's no one sort of looking over your shoulder and trying to memorize information, sorry, that they're not supposed to be exposed to. Physical security, first part. Second part was, how do we select the hardware? How do we select the appropriate hardware? We have 2 levels of storage solutions, hot, and I've worked with JP had many calls with him because it's open to the public that Sabre and Taurus work together in a partnership for the hot storage solution. So 2 is hardware, I would say, making sure that you have crystal clear what are your hardware requirements. 3, it's about which software you're going to be using. So what is it, a simple computer? Is it an HSM? Is it a software that you develop in-house? Is it a software that you buy? How do you make sure that you install? Is the software compatible with the hardware you're going to be choosing? And these 3 elements are closely tied to the 4th area, which is vendor management. So how do you set standards to a high how do you make sure that your standards are high enough with the security requirements that you have? How do you make sure that year after year the vendors what you're working with maintain, state-of-the-art solutions? So that's a continual review that we're doing. And 5, sorry, it's around the overarching out of those 4 is areas is sort of the 5th overarching that I call it, is how do you design processes and controls which are in line with your bank's risk appetite and which are targeting the state-of-the-art basically solutions which you want to sell to your customers. I think that's the biggest challenge. And at Sabre, we have a hot storage solution where we're in a close partnership with Taurus. So we deployed their solution. We designed our key ceremony ourselves without any support from Taurus. And for cold, basically we decided, well, actually, how can we build a solution reducing the vendor dependency? Because we buy a license from Taurus, they're super transparent. They're, we can have, audit reports and so on and so forth, but we're still dependent on them as a vendor. And for cold storage, what we decided to do is completely develop the solution in-house. Now, because you have different hardware, you have also different software for the 2 solutions, you have different processes, and you have a different set of physical security and then vendor management because we're using different vendors for the solution. So I would say these 5 areas, physical security, hardware, software, the processes and controls, and vendor management are sort of the things you need to calibrate depending on the solution you want to build. And ultimately, the key ceremonies is a mere process which allows you to fulfill that target state.
Thanks for that. for giving us some insight there. And the next question goes to Maria. So you're dealing with various providers, with various infrastructures. How do you make sure that there is some consistency in evaluating these solution providers?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a bit of a stereotype, but for us as auditors, it's important to have documentation available. So in the topic of key ceremonies, this is normally called a runbook or a storybook. So it's basically a process description of the whole key ceremony. So it starts with the place and the date, as well as the participants, their full names, their signatures, as well as a mapping with their roles. And then there, of course, has to be a description of the roles and responsibilities of all of the participants. And typically they're divided into 4 categories. The first one would be a master of ceremony, who's the leader of the ceremony. So this is the person who is reading the storybook out loud to all the participants and make sure that they know exactly what they have to do. This is the person who signs the so-called deviation protocol when there's anything that is not going according to the storybook. And this is also the person that periodically at predetermined intervals requests the signatures of all the participants that are in the room in order to prove that each of the steps have been followed up until that point. Then the second role that would be that typically would be there is the operator, who is the most active of the participants. This would be the person who types commands or connects devices, things like that. Then there would be a witness. This is a person who observes, and this is typically from the client as well. This is the person who makes sure that no one can see any secrets that they shouldn't be seeing. And then the fourth person to be present is an auditor. And the role of the auditor is a bit different than the witness in that they don't actively do anything. They're just there to observe and attest that all the steps were followed in the runbook. Then the next thing that is in the runbook is an inventory list. So you might have a list of hardware components as well as their serial numbers, so that at the time of the ceremony, you can check if the hardware that you actually have in a room is the one that you're supposed to have, or if there are deviations. The same is done for software, but for software and scripts that are used during the ceremony, you would have checksums or certificate numbers, which you can then also compare. And the most important thing is the fact that a runbook contains a list of steps to be done. So it's a very simple explanation, divided into chapters of what each person needs to do. So it's a chronological sequence of events. So it includes who does what commands need to be entered, and the result that is to be anticipated. So with that, this is a document that serves the purpose of auditability, and auditability again is very important, especially for institutionals in this area, because only with an audited document and with a neutral third party like PwC, you can prove that all the steps have happened, and you can provide assurance and comfort to your shareholders and clients that yes, your assets are actually safe. So this would be the first go-to document that we use. And we of course review it with the client first and make sure that there are no things that we don't understand from an audit perspective. What else we look at to compare the different kind of key ceremonies is things that I already talked about, like, are you sure that the 4I principle is observed at all time? I mean, is there never a person who can have single control over the secrets? Are there backups that are being made, and how are they made? How are they secured? But then there's also more technical things that JP already talked about in the introduction, like the pseudo-random generator. I mean, many people only talk about this in key generation ceremonies. I mean, it is, of course, there should be a good level of entropy, and there should be a good pseudo-random generator used to generate keys or seeds, but it's not the most important aspects. What we do look for in a source of entropy or with pseudo-random generators is that you know the internal logic, you know the algorithm, and you know the entropy sources. You have documents to back this up, and even better, you have independent code audits there. And then talking about the entropy sources, there should be like a heuristic way to determine the minimal entropy. Like for example, with Bitcoin or Ethereum, you would need 256-bit scalar values, and this is a very good way to compare different key ceremonies. But to be honest, other factors are more important for us. So for example, we also look at whether or not a company has a data sanitization policy, meaning that any entropy or any randomness that's used to generate secrets is wiped from any memory after the ceremony. So you would normally do this by wiping it several times with random values to make sure that there is nothing left that can be reconstructed after.
Thanks. Is there more to add, or like just would love to take a few questions after you're ready?
Yeah, I mean, I already talked about the artifacts and the backup, so that's fine. You can move on.
Perfect. Just to be mindful of time, everyone, maybe let's just take a question now from the audience. And excuse my pronunciation, but Le Chat, as in JP Le Chat, please unmute yourself and ask the question, and also respond who or say who you want to answer the question.
So yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you very well.
So you pronounce my well very well. It's French, not that easy. So my question was about the use of hardware wallet and the recommendation of using either one hardware wallet or several in order to making sure we have the right private key backup policies. So that was my question.
And who should respond to that? Charlie already started answering, so if you would be so kind.
Yeah, I can do. I can take this one. I'm the hardware wallet representative. Sorry. There is two different things. From one side, you have the hardware wallet on which you can use your crypto assets, and on the other side, there is the backup problem, which is quite different. On your hardware wallet, the seed is generated, and you will keep it securely inside the secure element in the hardware wallet. But for the backup, it's different. You will want to make it offline, and yes, multiple backup is definitely a good idea. You can also do some kind of Shamir secret sharing with 3 different recovery sheets if you want 2 out of 3 or something like this. So it's important to have multiple backup, but it's not necessary to have 2 different hardware to back up your seed. It's different problems.
Thank you so much. Hopefully that answers the question. And let's take the one from Marcus Henning as well, and then move on to the last 2 questions, which I have. Hey, Marcus, are you there?
Yes,
if so,
I'm here, yes. Yeah.
Oh, nice to have you. Hello, where are you calling in from?
From Germany, so
Nice.
stayed in Frankfurt, but I also lived in Grenoble, like one of the guys here. So I was...
Please tell us your question.
Yes, I was wondering how the key ceremony is changed if you don't use hardware devices, because I mean, I think we mainly spoke about like HSMs, but is there any change if you use like technologies like multi-party computations? Because I mean, there's a thing that we have protocols where you change the key shares on time and so on. So is there a big difference, or would I use a really similar kind of ceremony? Because they just imagined like my shares could be like distributed over the world on different like cloud centers, and I would have to like say multiply my key ceremony over different regions. So it sounds a bit more complex for me than just having a single device which I have to say back up essentially.
Thank you for the question. I think JP and also Charles can add here as the main tech guys.
So I just typed the answer in the chat, and maybe I can kill two birds with one stone by also answering another question that was asked. And the other question was about remote key ceremonies. Maybe to give some context on Marcus' question. So Marcus referred to MPC, multi-party computation, which also includes what is called threshold signature, which is a system whereby different participants have different shares of a key, different piece of the key, but in such a way that they cannot determine the key from the share, and in such a way that they can work together or follow a certain protocol to create a signature. So they will not reconstruct the key and then sign. They will do a cryptographic protocol to create a signature without the key never being exposed. So it's important to give this introduction because it has impact on the type of key ceremony that you do. So as I answered to Marcos in the chat, there are two main types of key generation. The first one is the centralized one, whereby you have a key ceremony where you generate the master key, the signing key, and then you generate the shares of the key and you distribute these shares. And then you make the backup of the key in any way you want. The second way is when you use a protocol called distributed key generation. So that's a protocol whereby all the participants work together, follow a certain set of operations, cryptographic protocol, to start from nothing to a state where they all have shares of a key. But the key itself is not owned by any party. So in this case, you will not make a backup of the key because there is no key to backup. Instead, you will make backups of each share of the key. And each participant, so I've seen cases in some big crypto exchanges where the participants involve, for example, people with some hardware token, people with a mobile phone, some cloud HSM, some on-premise HSM. It tends to be quite complicated, but it's doable with enough process. So in any case, there's this process whereby you make sure the generation is sound and nobody's cheating, and that you have backups somewhere and that the backups will work. Now regarding the question, can you do it remotely if you have people in different places in the world and you cannot be in the same physical room? So one example is the trusted setup from Zcash. So Zcash, the Zcash blockchain, the privacy preserving blockchain, they held remote key ceremony with people all around the world, and they shipped secure laptops to different people. So I'm tempted to say that in theory it's doable. In practice, it's super complicated, especially if you're in an environment where you are regulated and you need to have all the documentation, and you have people like Marcus and Maria making sure that everything goes well. So I'm not sure that Maria will approve a remote key ceremony. I don't know, maybe you can answer, but it's like opening a can of worms, and I would not recommend it unless you really have to.
Maybe Charles has something to add here.
Yes, with pleasure. Just I want to repeat what the GP just said. I completely agree. And just to comment about that, sometimes as key materials are distributed, people tend to think it's not important to implement the secure key ceremonies or to use secure hardware. And from my perspective, it's a very big mistake. So this is my first comment. And the second one is, threshold signature schemes are quite new cryptographic scheme. And from my perspective, this new protocol didn't pass the test of time yet. And in cryptography, this is something which is very important. It's not very responsible to push in production such new protocols. And GP just mentioned the Zcash trusted setup. That was a very new article. It was pushed in production too early, and there was a tiny mistake in this trusted setup, and this mistake could have had very large consequences. Hopefully, it seems not to be the case, but still.
Thank you so much for both of you. And now, actually, the next question is from me to JP and to you, Charles. And basically, if you guys could share how you create, how you generate the keys through your company's solution, that would be very kind. Who goes first, Charles, JP?
Okay. From a technical standpoint, the keys generation on Vault follows a clearly defined process. First of all, a quorum of stakeholders is formed. Typically 3 people in the organization are selected. They will be using their Ledger Blue. The Ledger Blue is a personal security device which embeds a secure element. A secure element is a circuit dedicated to security. These circuits are used in smart cards, such as passport and banking cards. And inside such a circuit, there is a true random number generator, which is implemented. These cryptographic engines are the most secure way to generate random. They are evaluated by third parties and certified by the highest standard. I mean, common criteria, AIS 31 standard, which is the highest level of security for random number generation. And along with this hardware engine is implemented cryptographic post-processing. This part is quite simple, as GP said before. And this word chain allows to generate high quality random numbers. So the 3 stakeholders will find a secure room and without any cameras, smartphone, recording device, and so on. And individually, they will generate their shares on their own personal security device. Each share is then provisioned to Ledger Vault HSM using our secure channel. The secure channel is a secure way to communicate from the secure element to the HSM. And when I say secure way, I mean 3 different security properties. I mean authentication, confidentiality, and integrity. Authentication, that means that the secure element, which is inside the personal security device, is able to prove its identity to the HSM, and I mean cryptographically. There is an attestation inside the enclave, which is installed during the manufacturing of the device inside the Ledger premises, and vice versa, the HSM is also able to prove its genuineness thanks to the Ledger root of trust. So this is for authentication. When this authentication is established, we are able to actually mount the secure channel and get the confidentiality with an ECDH and so on. Confidentiality means that all the data is end-to-end encrypted from the secure element to the HSM. And finally, the integrity means there is a mechanism to be sure that all the data has been transferred without modification. So using this secure channel, the 3 shares generated by 3 individuals are provisioned from a personal security device to the Ledger Vault HSM. And the Ledger Vault HSM will gather them to construct the master secret. We use this mechanism with some variation for several different key generation, but always this is the same idea. Of course, during the key ceremony, each individual stakeholder will back up his share using a dedicated cryptosteel. This is something like this, where you put your seed inside, and this cryptosteel will be stored in a physical safe. So basically, this is what key ceremony looks like on the Ledger Vault.
Thank you so much for familiarizing everyone with the process. And we hand over the mic to JP.
Yeah, so how do we generate keys in Torus? So we do it, we use a dice, very secure dice. We run it once, twice. And in physical security, it's a true Pseudo-Random Generator, secure by the laws of physics, chaotic systems, and so on. But of course, I'm joking, but I mean, that's just a premise to say that the random generator that you use is important. And I think what mentioned Charles, I think it's probably safe. I trust Ledger doing the right thing. They have good security people. There's a true PRNG certified but I think you also have to be careful of security theater in this side, because when we generate keys, we have, complexity is the enemy of security, and I think a lot of bells and whistles, it doesn't necessarily help. So the way we do it like I mentioned before, we use open source software that has been audited, trusted, used by tons of companies and people. We know exactly what's happening from the time when you press the key in terms of hardware, software, system calls, which part of the chip is used. We can debug it if need be. We can verify everything that happens. So I think the way we use the most established cryptographic software that I've myself been hired to audit by this organization. I don't know if I can give the name, but it will be no surprise to anyone, and underwent a lot of security audits.
Of course, we want the name, JP.
Okay, that's OpenSSL. And the way it works under the hood, you have all these crypto components. You use Random from a Linux system. You use the read run, read see the instructions from the CPU. And that's interesting because sometimes when we tell customers or partners that we do it this way, sometimes they're not disappointed, but like, oh, but I've seen some company using a crazy, a big red box with hyper quantum machine learning, 1 million bit security. And yeah, we don't have this. We have something very boring, but boring in cryptography often means higher assurance. And yeah, so if I want to elaborate a bit on this, the way we do it, we generate the key in on some computer, but then you also have the problem of where the computer comes from, where does the software come from. So we have a process whereby we try to maximize the security assurance in terms of supply chain, in terms of software assurance. For example, the operating system, you have the latest version. Oh, but to have the latest version, you need to download it from the internet. So do you want to download it or not? That is kind of question. But I think Charles or someone has mentioned that what's important when you generate the keys is that the computer is not connected to any network, even to wireless networks after you generated the keys, because it's good to be paranoid in this context. So we have some processes, also some, let's say, mitigations to avoid the exposure of the secret. I think like any ledger is probably doing the same. When you generate the key, you don't see it. You don't see it with your eyes. But at the same time, you want to make sure that it's safe. So we have to use some tools, some heuristics to make sure that the secret key is actually random. So I could talk about the secret sauce. I'm pretty candid about this, but maybe we have.
We don't have so much time, unfortunately. So thanks for the insights you gave. And with that, just really briefly to Maria and Vasily, and for everyone on the call, dear participants, we are going to overrun a few minutes. Hope you can stay on as the panelists can stay on. So Maria and Vasily, the question is what Maria basically touched based on a bit, that which are the most overlooked points during a key ceremony and which are the most common hiccups. And thanks, Maria, for sharing earlier, but I was wondering if Vasily wants to add there a few points, and if you guys want to touch base on the single person dependency briefly, that would be nice.
Sure. Maybe then two things. One is, I think it's important that you have a clear segregation of duties between the people that design the key ceremony, the people who actually are nominated for the actual execution of the key ceremony, and at the end, the people who will be operating on a day-to-day the solution which was initialized during the key ceremony. So I think that's what we decided at Cva very early, that we have this three-line segregation. In my experience, the most overlooked item is appreciation of how much work goes into doing a key ceremony or preparing a key ceremony. But more seriously, I think it's about making sure you repeat time after time as much as possible, sort of in your dev or testing environment, the protocol with the scripts you're using. Very often it can happen that actually last minute changes, you change basically your run book to your protocol, and it's not matching actually what has been implemented in the script. And so there has to be like some an intervention protocol where people start asking questions, or simply the key ceremony is then aborted. You go back to your desk and you start then fixing things before you execute the entire process all over again.
Thanks so much. We were just skipping out a single dependency question in, and with that we reached the last question, which is basically a quick question to everyone. And if you can give one recommendation for institutions who are just planning their key ceremony, then what is that one key recommendation you would give? Maria, you want to start?
PwC. No, I'm kidding. No, the most important thing would be to think in advance about what you actually want and to have a very clear concept of what the key generation ceremony entails. So who would have to be there? What hardware do we need? What software are you going to use? The issue that was touched upon as well, like, do you want the largest, sort of most updated version, or are you going to go with a relatively secure, stable build? And have a concept for access management and backup. That would be my recommendations.
Thank you so much. Charles?
Yeah, recommendation. From my perspective, what is paramount for key ceremony is preparation. You have to keep in mind the whole picture of the security problem you're trying to solve. In particular, you have to make sure that your key ceremony is actually compatible with your threat model. This is an overall analysis which must be conducted. From an operational standpoint, you have to design a backup strategy, make sure to avoid any single point of failure. You have to answer to the following question: what happens if one of my stakeholders turns rogue? What happens if one of my stakeholders is threatened or taken hostage, and so on? And from a technical standpoint, I always recommend external security audit. This is paramount to have an expert eye. You have to make sure the components you use, software and hardware, are correctly implemented and take into account supply chain attack threats. And finally, a very practical advice: write down every single step of your key ceremony, from the generation, provisioning, backup, recovery. And before the D-Day, practice again and again. That would be my main recommendation.
Thank you so much. JP, you want to go next?
Well, everything that Charles just said, just maybe one point. You also have, maybe I mentioned it, but you have to know that you also have to do key ceremonies or ceremonies with a similar process when you do other critical operations, such as maybe doing a firmware update in your HSM, or changing critical parameters in your secure element. So you may have to do a key ceremony even if no key is generated. So you have to identify when you need to do this.
Thank you very much. Vasily, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, I agree with what all three previous panelists said. I would just add, try to keep it simple and secure. It's the KISS. Really, the KISS. I mean, for us, sometimes we're too ambitious. We wanted to overcomplicate things, and we realized that actually perhaps by making so secure, you're actually, or by trying to make it so secure, you make the processes so complex that you end up jeopardizing security end. So keep it simple and secure.
Thank you so much for each of you, Maria, Charles, JP, Vasily. Pleasure to have you and to shed a bit of light on the key ceremonies. And we could chat about this for hours, but this much time we had. And with that, I will pass back to Marcus.
Thank you, Amy, and everybody, for sharing the wealth of your experiences with key ceremonies and helping everybody become better at securely generating their private keys. Coming back to Amy's question just before, my one recommendation is don't do a rookie mistake. Don't share your private key, ever. And don't use weak entropy, because if you search for this, it's been cracked already. It's been brute forced. Now, I hope that the key ceremony guidelines and this panel helped you and will help you, all of you in the audience, to increase trust in crypto assets and blockchain technology, because this is our mission in the CVA Cybersecurity Working Group, to increase trust in crypto assets and blockchain technology through the development and sharing of crypto cybersecurity best practices. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our time. If you have any questions left, don't hesitate to contact us through the CVA website, Twitter, or LinkedIn. We'll also be posting the link to the CVA Key Generation Guidelines in chat, and we'll be sending it around. Finally, please do get in touch if you'd like to become a member of our working group. You're going to be the first to hear about upcoming threats, new standards and publications, and will be able to participate in publications and panels like these. My name is Marcus Perdriza. I chair the CVA Cybersecurity Working Group together with JP Omasson, and we hope to hear back from you with your key ceremony war stories and crypto cybersecurity best practices. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.